Today, we embark on a journey that will transport us over 3,000 years into the heart of ancient Egypt, to a time when the Nile's golden banks cradled the mightiest civilization the world had ever known. Our story begins with a boy whose destiny was written not in papyrus scrolls, but in the very stars above, the boy king, Tutankhamun. Though his reign was brief, his legacy would echo across millennia, sealed in gold and mystery beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings. In this special documentary, Tutankhamun, Boy King's Rest, you will witness his world come alive, the grandeur of the royal court, the whispers of political intrigue, and the sacred rituals that bound the pharaoh to the gods. We will uncover the journey of a fragile young ruler who carried the weight of an empire and explore how his eternal rest was disturbed only to reveal wonders beyond imagination. Prepare to step through the gilded doors of history, where every artifact, every hieroglyph tells a story, and where the soul of a boy king still whispers in the desert winds. Let the sands part, and let the journey begin. The first light of dawn spills across the Nile, painting the waters with molten gold. Palm fronds sway gently in the morning breeze, and the air carries the mingled scent of lotus blossoms and the fertile earth. Along the riverbank, fishermen cast their nets, while ibises stalk the shallows, their calls echoing in the stillness. In this serene moment, Egypt breathes, an ancient land bound to the rhythms of the river. The Nile is not merely water, it is the lifeblood of the kingdom, the artery through which prosperity flows. It whispers to the fields, to the villages, to the very stones of the temples, promising abundance. Far away in the royal palace at Akhenaten, the whisper of the Nile reaches a small chamber where a newborn cries. His name will be Tutankhaten, living image of Aten, the son of a king whose vision will divide Egypt and a queen whose beauty will become legend. Outside his chamber, priests murmur blessings, invoking the favor of the gods. The world beyond is already shifting. Political unrest simmers in the provinces, discontent growing under the rule of Akhenaten, who has turned Egypt's devotion toward the sun disk Aten, neglecting the ancient gods. Whispers travel faster than the river current, of famine, of rebellion, of priests stripped of power. Yet in this moment, the boy is only a child swaddled in fine linen, his future unseen. The Nile flows on, as it has for millennia, indifferent to the destinies of kings. But somewhere deep in its eternal current, it seems to hum a prophecy that this child will one day wear the double crown of Egypt. His reign will be brief, yet his name will outlive empires. The whisper of the Nile carries both promise and warning. As the desert wind curls around the palace walls, the boy king is not yet crowned, but his story has already begun. The palace of Akhenaten thrums with life. Courtyards echo with the sound of bronze chimes swaying in the breeze, and corridors are bright with sunlight spilling through carved stone columns. In the heart of the royal wing, the women of the court move with practiced grace, tending to the newest life of Egypt's divine blood line. Tutankhaten, still an infant, is the son of Pharaoh Akhenaten and, according to many, a woman of royal but complex lineage. His birth marks more than just the arrival of a child. It is the continuation of a divine line, believed to be descended from the gods themselves. In the palace records, scribes write his name carefully, for names are not mere labels in Egypt. They are spells that carry power, shaping destiny. The boy's first days are spent in chambers, adorned with painted lotus blossoms, gilded furniture, and cool alabaster jars of scented water. His mother keeps him close, shielding him from the desert's harsh glare. The palace priests, ever watchful, see him as a symbol of hope for the Atenist dynasty, even as murmurs of discontent ripple through the city beyond the palace gates. Akhenaten, often absent from the child's side, is consumed with his religious reforms, pulling Egypt's worship away from Amun and toward Aten, the sun disk. Yet, in private moments, the pharaoh gazes upon his son with pride, envisioning a ruler who will carry forward his spiritual revolution. The future, however, is far from certain. The boy's path will be shaped by forces far greater, than his father's will, by the will of the people, the might of the priesthood, and the unseen hand of fate. As the sun sets over Akhenaten, painting the city in gold and crimson, the child sleeps peacefully, unaware that his birth has already begun to stir the currents of history. Egypt watches, and the gods, whether of Aten or Amun, listen. The days in the royal nursery pass beneath the watchful eyes of both mortals and gods. Tutankhamun, now a little older, spends his mornings in the palace gardens, where the air is heavy with the scent of lotus and myrrh. The Nile's breeze carries the distant sounds of chanting from the temple of Aten, a reminder that even in play, the life of a prince is steeped in divine expectation. In the great audience hall, carved with towering columns and golden reliefs, the boy is brought before the high priests. Here, he is introduced to the gods, not in flesh, but through sacred statues, painted murals, and the solemn words of the temple keepers. He learns of Aten, the life-giving sun disk his father adores, and hears whispers of the old gods, Amun, Osiris, Isis, deities whose names are spoken softly, almost forbidden. The priests of Aten teach him the rituals of offering, the pouring of scented oils, the placement of lotus blossoms, the raising of hands to the sky at sunrise. Though still a child, Tutankhamun's movements are guided with care, for these gestures are the language of kingship. The boy listens intently, though he does not yet understand the political weight behind the choice of gods he serves. In the evening, his mother tells him stories, not of Aten, but of the great gods of old: Osiris, lord of the underworld; Horus, the falcon god of kingship; and Ra, the sun god whose journey through the sky protects the living. These tales paint the heavens as a realm teeming with divine beings, a vision far richer than the single blazing disk. Between these two worlds, the sanctioned faith of his father and the whispered traditions of his ancestors, Tutankhamun's identity begins to form. One day the gods will demand his allegiance, and one day the mortals of Egypt will judge his choice. The palace at Akhenaten is a world of light and shadow. Vast courtyards bathed in golden sun, and shaded corridors where whispers travel like the desert wind. Tutankhamun, now old enough to walk with the confidence of a prince, begins to explore his father's court. The royal court is a living tapestry. Foreign envoys arrive bearing gifts: lapis from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, ivory from Nubia. Scribes in crisp linen robes record every word, every offering. The scent of incense hangs heavy in the throne hall, where Pharaoh Akhenaten sits elevated upon a dais, the Aten's golden rays painted behind him. Tutankhamun often walks beside his mother or trusted attendants, observing how the court functions. He watches as officials bow deeply, their foreheads nearly touching the floor, before they speak to the king. He notices the subtle glances between advisors, the tense negotiations cloaked in polite words. But court life is not all ceremony. In the quieter gardens, the boy plays with carved ivory toys, runs along stone pathways, and listens to the gossip of servants who forget that small ears can hear well. He learns that power is not just in the crown. It is in alliances, in whispered promises, in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Occasionally, the boy is invited to sit beside his father during audiences, a symbolic presence meant to remind all that the royal bloodline is secure. Though his feet dangle above the dais floor, he holds his posture with surprising dignity, imitating the pharaoh's composed stillness. In those moments, courtiers and diplomats alike take note. The boy is watching, and one day he will rule. The reign of Akhenaten is unlike any that came before. The walls of Akhenaten are carved with images not of many gods, but of one, Aten, the sun disk, its golden rays ending in hands that touch the earth. Across Egypt, temples to the old gods are shuttered, their treasures seized, their priests stripped of authority. Tutankhamun grows up under the brilliance of this new faith. Yet, he also feels the subtle tension that coils beneath the marble floors of the palace. Beyond the city walls, the people murmur of change with unease. Farmers who once prayed to Hapi for the Nile's flood now stand uncertain before Aten's open-air temples. The priesthood of Amun, once the most powerful in Egypt, is humiliated but not destroyed, their loyalty quietly shifting toward the day they might reclaim influence. Akhenaten himself is a man of vision, a visionary to some, a heretic to others. His devotion to Aten consumes him, leaving affairs of state and diplomacy in the hands of ministers. Foreign alliances strain under neglect, while internal unrest simmers in the provinces. Yet to his son, he is a figure of authority and pride. Tutankhaten watches his father stand tall before the blazing sun, arms outstretched, as if he communes directly with the divine. But the boy also hears the whispers in the palace corridors. Advisors mutter that the treasury grows thin, that enemy chariots mass beyond the borders. Some servants still carry amulets of the old gods, hidden in their linen folds. In the privacy of the nursery, his mother tells him, "A pharaoh's strength is not in his prayers alone, but in the hearts of his people." Akhenaten's dream is magnificent, a singular god for a united Egypt, but it is also fragile. Tutankhaten does not yet know it, but he will inherit the weight of this vision and the task of restoring what it left broken. The great court of Waset Thebes is alive with the thunder of drums, the scent of burning incense, and the shimmer of gold in the morning sun. After the death of Akhenaten, Egypt stands at a crossroads. Ministers and priests have agreed. The young prince, Tutankhaten, now just 9 years old, will ascend the throne. His coronation will not only mark the rise of a new pharaoh, but also signal a shift in Egypt's spiritual path. The palace is a cascade of activity. Servants prepare ceremonial robes woven with threads of gold, while jewelers fasten the broad collar of turquoise, lapis, and carnelian around the boy's neck. His sidelock of youth remains, a symbol of innocence, but on this day it is adorned with a golden cobra diadem, the uraeus, to mark his divine authority. In the temple of Amun, priests chant blessings that echo from column to column. This is not Akhenaten's open-air shrine to Aten. This is the old god's house, rich with the scent of myrrh and the shadows of centuries. The boy kneels before the sacred statue of Amun, his head bowed, as the high priest anoints him with holy oil. Crowds gather in the temple courtyard, straining for a glimpse of their new ruler. Some cheer, others watch silently, weighing the fragile promise of stability against the weight of the past. At the climax, the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, red for the north, white for the south, is placed upon the boy's head. He rises, no longer Tutankhaten, but Tutankhamun, living image of Amun. The change of name is more than symbolic. It is a declaration that the gods of old have returned to their rightful place. As the drums roll and the trumpets sound, Tutankhamun steps forward to face his people. He is small in stature, but the moment swells around him, casting the shadow of a king far beyond his years. Egypt once again has a pharaoh. The first decrees of Pharaoh Tutankhamun mark a turning point in Egypt's spiritual life. Barely a year into his reign, the young king, guided by his advisors and the powerful priesthood, orders the restoration of the temples of Amun, Osiris, Ptah, and the pantheon of the old gods. In Thebes, temple courtyards once abandoned under Akhenatens rule awaken with life. Broken statues are lifted from the sand, their features painstakingly restored by skilled artisans. Priests return to their sanctuaries, lighting incense in altars that have stood cold for years. Sacred processions wind through city streets, the air thick with the sound of sistrums and the chanting of hymns that had been forbidden. Tutankhamun, still only a boy, rides in a golden chariot through the streets of Waset. His small hands grip the reins as the people cheer, showering him with lotus petals. Though his youthful smile hides it, he is aware that this pageantry is more than celebration. It is a political statement. By embracing the old gods, the young pharaoh wins the loyalty of the Amun priesthood and soothes the unrest that has simmered since his father's death. In the palace halls, new inscriptions are carved. Tutankhamun, living image of Amun, restorer of the temples. Royal scribes strike the name of Akhenaten from official records, restoring the traditional capitals of Memphis and Thebes to prominence. The city of Akhenaten is left to fade in the desert sun. Behind the scenes, powerful ministers such as Ai and General Horemheb ensure that these changes strengthen their own positions as much as the throne. For now, their interests align. Egypt is united under its gods once more. That night, as the young pharaoh stands on a balcony overlooking the Nile, he sees the temple fires glowing along the banks. The chants drift across the water, a reminder that the gods have returned, and that he, though still a child, has already altered the course of history. In the palace gardens of Thebes, where papyrus reeds sway and lotus blossoms float on mirrored pools, a royal union is prepared. Tutankhamun, now entering his teenage years, is to marry Ankhesenamun, his half-sister, daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Their marriage is not merely a matter of affection. It is an unbroken thread in the tapestry of divine kingship, a way to keep the bloodline pure and secure the throne. Ankhesenamun is older than Tutankhamun by several years. She carries herself with the grace of a queen, already accustomed to courtly life and politically aware. She understands that their marriage will place her in a position of power, but also in a web of intrigue. For the boy king, she will be not only wife but advisor, protector, and sometimes shield against the ambitions of the court. The wedding ceremony is an elaborate blend of sacred and regal. In the temple courtyard, priests of Amun chant blessings as the couple exchanges garlands of lotus and papyrus, symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt. Gold bracelets and jeweled collars glisten in the sunlight, and the scent of frankincense fills the air. After the ceremony, the couple rides together in a gilded chariot through the streets. Greeted by cheers from the people, the union is celebrated as a sign of stability and continuity. But within the palace walls, advisors are already considering what heirs this marriage might produce, and what alliances it might strengthen or weaken. That evening, as the sun sets over the Nile, Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun share their first quiet moment as king and queen. The young pharaoh looks at her with trust, knowing that in the turbulent years to come, she will be both partner and ally. The queen, in turn, sees the weight of kingship already shaping the boy she has married, and silently vows to help him bear it. The warm winds from the south carry troubling news. Egypt's borders are no longer secure. Reports from scouts tell of Hittite incursions in the north and unrest among Nubian tribes in the south. Although still a young king, Tutankhamun cannot ignore the call to defend his kingdom. In the war court, maps of the empire are unfurled across a cedar table. Bronze figurines mark cities, fortresses, and enemy positions. General Horemheb, a seasoned commander, stands beside the pharaoh, explaining the movements of foreign forces. His voice is steady, his eyes sharp, and his loyalty to the throne unquestionable. For now, Tutankhamun listens intently, his youthful face set in determination. He may not yet have the strength to wield a khopesh in battle, but he understands the importance of commanding Egypt's armies with authority. With Queen Akhenaten present, he issues orders for reinforcements to be sent north and south. Messengers on swift chariots will carry his commands to garrisons along the Nile. In the training fields outside Thebes, soldiers drill under the relentless sun. Archers loose arrows into straw targets. Charioteers wheel their teams in tight formations, and spearmen march in unison. Tutankhamun visits the fields, observing every movement. His presence inspires the troops, who cheer as their pharaoh rides past in a golden chariot. Despite the warlike preparations, the king's council advises caution. Egypt's resources are still recovering from the neglect of Akhenaten's reign, and open war could strain the treasury. For now, Egypt's show of force is as much a message as a defense, a warning to its enemies that the boy king's rule is not to be tested. As the sun dips below the horizon, Tutankhamun stands on the palace balcony, gazing toward the distant borders. He knows the peace of his reign will be fragile, unless his enemies believe in his strength. The sound of marching soldiers in the distance tells him that message is already on its way. The kingdom Tutankhamun inherited is still finding its balance. The religious upheaval of Akhenaten's reign, the restoration of the old gods, and the lingering threat of foreign powers have left Egypt walking a tightrope between stability and unrest. In the council chamber, sunlight streams through carved lattice windows, casting patterns across a long table, where ministers, generals, and priests gather. I, the wise but calculating elder statesman, speaks first, his words measured, but his influence unmistakable. He urges the pharaoh to focus on rebuilding Egypt's wealth. Egypt's through trade and agriculture before committing to major military campaigns. Horemheb, seated across from argues for strengthening Egypt's borders and taking a more aggressive stance toward its enemies. The priests of Amun, meanwhile, press for the completion of temple restorations, claiming that the god's favor is the key to the nation's prosperity. Tutankhamun listens to each voice, his gaze steady. Though still young, he is learning the art of balancing competing powers. Akhenaten sits beside him, her quiet glances and subtle nods guiding his decisions. She knows that any misstep could shift the delicate balance of the court and the kingdom. Beyond the palace walls, Egypt begins to stir with life again. Farmers return to their fields. Traders bring foreign goods up the Nile, and artisans fill the markets with brightly painted wares. Yet, in the darker corners of the city, whispers of dissatisfaction remain. Some still question the king's ability to rule without being controlled by his advisors. That evening, Tutankhamun walks the palace gardens with Akhenaten. discussing the path ahead. He understands that Egypt's future will not be secured by one decisive act, but by the patient weaving of alliances between temple and palace, military and trade, tradition and reform. The kingdom is changing, and so is he. Night falls over Thebes, and the palace grows quiet except for the soft rustle of palm fronds in the evening breeze. Tutankhamun, now in the prime of youth, sits alone in his private chambers. Before him, an unrolled papyrus is covered with sketches, not decrees or temple plans, but visions of the Egypt he wishes to see. He dreams of a united kingdom, where the gods are honored, the fields are fertile, and Egypt's enemies fear her might. He envisions grand temples, not only to Amun but to the other gods who guard Egypt's balance. In his mind's eye, the Nile glitters under the sails of trade ships bringing wealth from distant lands, while his armies guard the borders with pride. Yet dreams are fragile, and Tutankhamun knows the realities that bind them. His body is often racked with pain, a weakness he hides from his people and even from much of his court. The physicians speak of old injuries and ailments inherited from generations of close royal bloodlines. At times, the pain makes him wonder how long he will be able to carry the burdens of kingship. Akhenaten visits him, finding him bent over the papyrus. She studies the drawings and smiles, telling him that vision is the first step toward greatness. Thou, Entra, they speak softly of the future, of the children they hope for, of the stability Egypt needs, and of the legacy they wish to leave behind. Later, Tutankhamun prays alone in the palace sanctuary. The flicker of oil lamps casts shadows across the statues of the gods. He asks for strength, not just for war or politics, but to live long enough to see his dreams fulfilled. In the silence, the stone eyes of the gods seem to watch him, as if weighing the sincerity of his plea. The desert stretches endlessly before the royal hunting party for hunting. The golden sands, broken only by rocky outcrops and clusters of acacia trees. It is dawn, and the air is still cool as Tutankhamun mounts his chariot, the bronze fittings gleaming in the rising sun. And today is no ordinary hunt. It is both a royal tradition, dotting brain, and a test of strength before the gods and his people. Hunting is a sport reserved for kings, a symbolic act of power and divine favor. But pharaohs are expected to master the bow and spear, striking down wild beasts as proof of their ability to protect Egypt. For Tutankhamun, the hunt is also a chance to quiet the whispers of weakness that sometimes circulate in the court. The chariot wheels cut through the sand as the king leads his party deeper into the desert. General Horemheb rides alongside, ready to protect the young ruler, but careful not to overshadow him. Attendants release hunting dogs that sprint ahead, their barks echoing across the dunes. A sudden cry from a scout signals the sighting of their quarry, an oryx, swift and graceful, darting between low dunes. Tutankhamun draws his bow, the polished wood steady in his grip. The chariot bumps across uneven ground, yet his aim holds. With a sharp twang, the arrow flies, striking the beast cleanly. The party erupts in cheers as the king steps down from his chariot to claim the prize. Priests accompanying the hunt offer a quick blessing, thanking the gods for their favor. The hunt will be recorded on temple walls, immortalizing the moment when the boy king proved his skill and bravery. As the sun climbs higher, the party begins the journey back to Thebes. Tutankhamun stands tall in his chariot, the oryx secured behind him, a symbol of victory and kingship. In his heart, he knows the hunt has given him more than a trophy. It has given him the confidence to face the challenges ahead. The gilded walls of the palace hide more than treasures. They conceal secrets, ambitions, and whispers that can wound more deeply than any blade. Tutankhamun, returning from the royal hunt, finds his court not in celebration, but in quiet tension. The smiles of certain courtiers seem tighter, the bows less sincere. In the grand audience hall, the young pharaoh listens to reports of unrest in the provinces, but he notices something more troubling: advisors disagreeing in coded words, exchanging sidelong glances that speak of private deals and unspoken alliances. The elder statesman, speaks with careful diplomacy, urging patience and negotiation. General Horemheb counters with calls for swift, decisive action. Neither looks at the other directly, yet the tension between them hums like a drawn bowstring. Akhenaten warns her husband that some members of the court see his youth as an opportunity, a chance to guide his rule for their own benefit. There are rumors of officials hoarding grain, of temple treasuries being quietly depleted, and of foreign envoys bribing scribes for information. Late at night, in the flickering lamplight of his private study, Tutankhamun confides in a trusted guard captain. He orders discreet surveillance of key officials, determined to uncover the truth. The guard, loyal and silent, nods and vanishes into the shadows. In the coming days, strange events occur. A letter meant for the pharaoh never reaches his hand. A storehouse of temple offerings is found emptied, with the culprit mysteriously vanished. A servant is caught eavesdropping near the king's chambers, but refuses to name who sent him. Tutankhamun begins to understand that the real threat to his reign may not come from distant borders, but from within the very walls that are supposed to protect him. The game of power in the palace has begun, and the stakes are nothing less than the crown. The late summer heat hangs heavy over Thebes, and the palace is unusually quiet. Tutankhamun has returned from a short inspection of temple works along the Nile. Witnesses recall him in good spirits, but within days whispers spread that the young pharaoh has taken ill. At first, it is dismissed as exhaustion from travel, yet soon his steps grow unsteady, and pain seizes his leg, forcing him to lean on a carved ivory cane. The court physicians are summoned, their hands full of ointments, herbs, and charms, but their expressions betray concern. Akhenaten remains constantly at his side, her composure masking the fear that gnaws at her. Some say he suffered a fall from his chariot during a hunt, others that an old injury has worsened. A few whisper more sinister theories. That poison has found its way into the royal cup. In the dim council chamber, Aya and Horemheb exchange clipped words, each insisting on different courses of action for the kingdom, while carefully avoiding accusations. As the illness worsens, the pharaoh is confined to his bedchamber. The once vibrant boy king now lies pale and thin, the gold of his jewelry stark against his skin. At night he dreams fitfully, visions of the Nile and the gods flickering in his mind, like the flame of a dying lamp. Despite the efforts of healers, the young king's condition does not improve. Akhenaten sends offerings to every temple in Thebes, pleading with the gods for mercy. Outside the palace, the people begin to worry, sensing the uncertainty in the air. Egypt has endured, and the thought of losing its ruler so soon after his rise fills the land with dread. The palace walls seem to close in with silence. Whether by accident, illness, or the hand of an enemy, the fate of the boy king now hangs by a thread. The air in the royal bedchamber is heavy with incense and the low murmur of prayers. Oil lamps flicker against walls, painted with lotus blossoms and divine symbols, their light casting shifting shadows across the pale form of the boy king. Tutankhamun's breathing is shallow now. each rise and fall of his chest a fragile rhythm. Akhenaten sits beside him, her fingers wrapped around his hand, as though willing her strength into him. She has not left his side in days, her once perfect hair now loose and unkempt, her eyes rimmed with sleepless worry. The court physicians move quietly, applying ointments, offering water, but their silence speaks more than their words. They know the end is near. A stands at the foot of the bed, his expression unreadable. Whether in mourning or calculation, none can say. Horemheb arrives briefly, bowing deeply before his king, the glint of battle-hardened resolve in his eyes. Outside, the high priests chant to Amun, Osiris, and Anubis, beseeching them to guide the pharaoh safely into the afterlife. As the hours pass, Tutankhamun's gaze drifts to the ceiling, where painted stars glimmer faintly in the lamplight. Perhaps he sees the gods waiting, or the fields of reeds where the blessed dwell. With a final effort, he turns his head toward Akhenaten, a faint smile touching his lips. His voice is barely a whisper, but she leans close and catches his words, a plea for her to protect Egypt and its people. She nods, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The last breath comes quietly. Like the fading of a candle in still air, the priests step forward, raising their hands in blessing. Akhenaten closes his eyes gently, then presses her forehead to his in farewell. Outside the chamber, a guard sounds a deep, mournful horn. The news spreads swiftly. Pharaoh Tutankhamun, the boy king, is dead. The Nile flows on, indifferent, but Egypt has lost its ruler, and its future has been cast into uncertainty. The news of Tutankhamun's death spreads across Thebes like a dark wind. From the grandest palaces to the humblest huts, the people mourn their pharaoh. The city's bustling markets fall, and the air is heavy with the scent of burning myrrh, as households light lamps in his honor. In the palace, Akhenaten dresses in mourning white, her hair bound beneath a linen veil. Her steps are slow, as she leads the first procession through the courtyard, flanked by priests of Anubis in jackal-headed masks. Women wail loudly, tearing at their garments in the traditional show of grief, their cries carrying over the temple walls. The body of the pharaoh lies in the house of purification, where embalmers begin their sacred work. They wash him in blessed water from the Nile, anoint his skin with fragrant oils, and wrap him in the first layers of linen. All the while, chants fill the chamber, calling upon Osiris to receive the young king into the eternal fields. Crowds gather outside the palace gates, hoping for a glimpse of the royal bier. Some kneel in prayer, others throw lotus blossoms into the waters of the Nile, sending them downstream as offerings to their departed ruler. The loss of the boy king is felt not just in the halls of power, but in the hearts of the common people who saw in him a symbol of renewal. Inside the council chamber, Awai meets with Horemheb and the high priests to plan the state funeral. The delicate balance of power is already shifting, but for now, politics is kept behind closed doors. In public, the image of unity is carefully maintained, for Egypt must bury its king with honor before deciding its next ruler. As the sun sets, the city glows in the light of 1,000 oil lamps. The night air hums with prayer, mourning songs, and the slow beat of funeral drums. Egypt weeps, and the Nile carries its sorrow toward the sea deep in the Valley of the Kings. Away from the noise of Thebes, the entrance to Tutankhamun's final resting place begins to take shape. The work is swift but meticulous, for a pharaoh must be buried according to the sacred rites, and time is short. Skilled craftsmen, goldsmiths, and stonecutters labor by torchlight, their tools ringing against the limestone walls. The tomb is modest in size compared to those of past pharaohs, but its splendor lies in its treasures. Gold leaf glimmers in the flickering light as artisans inlay scenes of the king's life and his journey to the afterlife. On one wall, Tutankhamun is shown embraced by Osiris. On another, he stands before the gods of judgment. In workshops within the palace, the funerary treasures are prepared. Golden shrines to encase the sarcophagus, canopic jars of alabaster, gilded chariots, thrones, and statues of protective deities. Every piece is both art and spell, meant to shield the pharaoh's spirit from harm. A visits the tomb frequently, ensuring the work proceeds without delay. His presence is both a show of devotion and a quiet reminder of his growing influence. Akhenaten, in mourning attire, delivers personal items to be placed with her husband: a hunting bow, a writing palette, and amulets they once shared. Priests of Anubis oversee the rituals, sprinkling natron and incense to purify the space. The air is thick with the scent of resin and myrrh, a promise that the journey to the next world will be made in honor. As the final touches are completed, the inner burial chamber glows with gold. The tomb may be small, but it is a palace for eternity, a treasure-filled vessel to carry the boy king to the western horizon where the sun sets and the afterlife begins. The dawn in the Valley of the Kings is still and somber. The narrow gorge is bathed in pale light as the funeral procession winds its way toward Tutankhamun's final resting place. At its head walks Akhenaten, veiled in white, followed by high priests bearing incense burners. Behind them, the golden sarcophagus glints under the morning sun, carried by 12 chosen attendants. The air is heavy with the sound of ritual, the steady beat of sacred drums, the rhythmic chanting of hymns to Osiris and Anubis. At the tomb's entrance, AY stands waiting in full ceremonial attire, ready to preside over the final rites. Horemheb is present too, his armor absent but his presence commanding, a reminder that the pharaoh's body is also a symbol of state power. The barik. Inside the burial chamber, priests carefully lower the sarcophagus into its gilded shrine. They place protective amulets upon the wrappings, whispering prayers for safe passage through the underworld. Layers of golden shrines are assembled around the coffin, each adorned with spells from the Book of the Dead. Akhenaten steps forward with her final offering, a lotus blossom placed gently upon the sarcophagus lid. For a moment, she lingers, her fingers resting on the gold, her face hidden beneath the veil. A signals to the chief priest, and the ritual sealing begins. Clay is pressed into the tomb's door seams, and the royal seal of the pharaoh is stamped in red wax. The last act is the symbolic closing of the stone door. With a deep, echoing thud, the entrance is blocked, sealing the boy king within his palace of eternity. The sound reverberates through the chamber like a final heartbeat. As the priests extinguish the torches, the tomb falls into darkness. Outside, the procession disperses slowly, leaving the valley silent once more. Tutankhamun will now journey to the west to join the eternal kings in the field of reeds. His name and story entrusted to the sands of time, the stone door closes, and the Valley of the Kings falls still. The chants fade, the footsteps vanish, and the winds sweep over the narrow gorge, erasing all trace of the funeral procession. Beneath layers of limestone and shifting sand, Tutankhamun lies in his golden tomb, sealed away from the world. Seasons change, dynasties rise and fall. The capital moves north to the delta, leaving Thebes and its necropolis abandoned to time. The tomb becomes just another hidden chamber in the valley, its location forgotten by all but the gods. Centuries pass. Sandstorms cloak the valley in drifting dunes, burying the entrance deeper and deeper. Rockfalls hide the tomb beneath jagged cliffs, and new tombs of later pharaohs are carved above it, unwittingly concealing its presence. Grave robbers scour the valley in search of treasure, but Tutankhamun's resting place remains untouched, shielded by obscurity and the accident of its placement. In the villages along the Nile, his name fades from memory. The statues of other kings stand tall in temples, their deeds recorded in hieroglyphs, while the boy king's legacy sleeps in darkness. Even the priests who once spoke his name in prayer are long gone, their temples fallen into ruin. The tomb waits as centuries turn to millennia. Outside, the world transforms. Empires rise and crumble, foreign armies march across Egypt, and new faiths take root. But within the burial chamber, the air remains still, the gold untouched, the paintings bright as the day they were made. It is as if time itself has been halted within those walls. The boy king rests beneath his protective gods, watched over by Anubis, Isis, and Horus, his journey through the afterlife ongoing. 3,000 years of silence pass before a single human hand will disturb the seal again. The desert keeps its secret well, holding the last untouched treasure of ancient Egypt, waiting for the day it will be found. By the late Sugioth century, the Valley of the Kings is no longer silent. Archaeologists, treasure hunters, and local diggers scour its dusty ravines, driven by tales of lost gold and forgotten kings. Most believe the valley has yielded all its secrets. Yet among the Bedouin guides and seasoned excavators, a few speak of a tomb still hidden, the resting place of a young pharaoh whose name has been almost erased from history. These whispers travel in shaded coffeehouses in Luxor, passed from the lips of elderly guides who claim to have heard the stories from their grandfathers. Some tell of a burial overlooked by ancient robbers, hidden beneath rubble and debris from later tombs. Others swear they have seen faint carvings on broken stones bearing a name few recognize. They have seen carvings on broken stones bearing a name few recognize. Tutankhamun. In the campfires of foreign expeditions, explorers debate the plausibility of such a find. Many dismiss it as myth, pointing to the dozens of empty tombs already excavated. Yet a handful of determined men take the rumors seriously, seeing in it the chance to make the greatest discovery in Egyptian archaeology. Among them are wealthy patrons and collectors, eager for glory as much as for historical preservation. They hire teams of local workers to probe the valleys, rocky slopes, sifting through rubble in the hope of stumbling upon an untouched entrance. The work is slow and often fruitless, but the possibility of finding a sealed royal tomb keeps the search alive. Over the years, fragments emerge. A cup bearing the boy king's cartouche, a piece of gold foil matching the style of the late Shubath dynasty. Each discovery fans the embers of the legend, convincing some that the tomb is indeed real, waiting beneath the desert's relentless sun. And so the whispers persist, carried on the hot winds that swirl through the Valley of the Kings. The desert knows the truth, but it will not give it up easily. The time for the tomb's unveiling is drawing near, though none yet realize how close they are to the moment that will change history. In the early years of the 1st century, the Valley of the Kings is alive with excavations, but one man stands apart from the rest: Howard Carter, a meticulous English archaeologist with an artist's eye. Carter has already made his mark in Egyptology, yet he feels his greatest discovery still lies ahead. And in his mind, that discovery is Tutankhamun, an introducer to the legend of the boy king. Through fragments and rumors, Carter becomes convinced that the tomb remains hidden somewhere beneath the valleys. Sun-baked soil. Unlike many treasure hunters, he is not swayed solely by visions of gold. For him, the true prize is knowledge, the chance to uncover a complete, untouched royal burial that could illuminate an era shrouded in mystery. In Ichen Jobait Ling Chi, Carter meets the wealthy English aristocrat Lord Carnarvon, who shares his passion and agrees to finance his search. The partnership is sealed with a handshake beneath the towering cliffs of the valley. Together they begin a methodical excavation, Carter's disciplined approach contrasting with the hurried digs of others. Years pass with little to show. Skeptics mock Carter's obsession, calling it a fool's errand. Yet he refuses to give up, keeping detailed records of every scrap of evidence. A pottery shard, a seal fragment, a discarded tool, that suggests the presence of the boy king's tomb. By Iten Jobait Arsara, Carnarvon's patience is wearing thin. Funding is nearly exhausted, and other archaeologists have already moved on. But Carter persuades him to finance one final season, promising to leave no stone unturned. The camp is set up once again, and Carter walks the valley at dusk, tree-strewed, scanning the ground as the wind stirs the sand. He knows in his heart that the tomb is there. It is only a matter of finding the right place to dig. November 3rd, Ichen Jobait Arsarar. The morning begins like any other in the Valley of the Kings. Laborers work methodically under the direction of Howard Carter's foreman, clearing rubble near the tomb of Ramesses VI. But as shovels scrape against something solid, the rhythm of the work changes. The foreman calls Carter over, and together they brush away the dust to reveal the top step of a stairway cut into the rock. Carter's heart pounds. For years he has dreamed of this moment, yet he forces himself to proceed carefully. The workers clear more steps, revealing a sealed doorway marked with the cartouche of Tutankhamun. His hands tremble as he traces the ancient seal, unbroken, untouched for over 3,000 years. He sends word to Lord Carnarvon, who is in England, urging him to come at once. Until his patron arrives, the tomb will remain closed. For several tense days, Carter guards the site, sleeping in a tent nearby, knowing that the sands of time have held this secret for millennia, and it is now in his care. On November Ursaluth, Carnarvon arrives. By torchlight, they cut a small hole in the plastered doorway. Carter lights a candle and peers through the opening. At first, he sees only darkness. Then, as his eyes adjust, the shapes begin to emerge. Gilded couches shaped like animals, inlaid chests, ivory statues, and treasures piled high, untouched since the day of burial. Carnarvon, unable to contain his excitement, asks, "Can you see anything?" Carter's voice is hushed, awestruck. "Yes, wonderful things. The tomb of Tutankhamun, hidden for over 3,000 years, has finally been found." The world reacts with wonder to the news of Tutankhamun's tomb. But in the weeks after its opening, the air around the Valley of the Kings grows thick with rumor. Among the locals, whispers begin to circulate that disturbing the pharaoh's rest has awakened an ancient curse. It begins with small incidents. A cobra, sacred to the pharaoh, is found inside Carter's home, having killed his pet canary. Workers report strange sounds at night, the creak of unseen footsteps, the faint ring of metal against stone. Some laugh it off. Others quietly make offerings to ward off evil. Then tragedy strikes. On April Woof, Ichen Jobait Arsasan, Lord Carnarvon dies suddenly in Cairo from blood poisoning after a mosquito bite becomes infected. Newspapers seize on the story, proclaiming that the curse of the pharaoh has claimed its first victim. They point to an inscription found inside the tomb. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." More deaths follow in the years to come. Some of Carter's team, a few visitors, even relatives of those connected to the excavation, unfuels the legend. Scientists dismiss the idea, citing natural causes. Yet the allure of the curse grows stronger in the public imagination. Carter himself refuses to believe it. He continues his work with meticulous precision, cataloging thousands of artifacts. But even he cannot ignore the unease in the eyes of his workers, or the way villagers cross themselves when he passes. In truth, whether curse or coincidence, the tomb has changed all who entered it. For some it brought fame and fortune, for others, only fear and misfortune. But for Tutankhamun, the disturbance of his eternal rest has ensured his name will never again be forgotten. The inner chambers of Tutankhamun's tomb are unlike anything the modern world has ever seen. By the glow of lanterns, Howard Carter and his team step into a realm of gold, ivory and lapis, preserved for over 3,000 years. Every surface is filled, chariots inlaid with precious metals, thrones decorated with scenes of the king and queen, alabaster jars still sealed with their original stoppers. See? The air is heavy with the scent of ancient resins. Walls gleam with intricate paintings, showing Tutankhamun before the gods, receiving life and protection in the afterlife. In one corner, life-size statues of the Pharaoh stand guard, their black skin and golden crowns glistening in the dim light. The most breathtaking sight lies at the center, 4 gilded shrines nested one within another, each protecting the royal sarcophagus. The craftsmanship is exquisite, every panel carved with protective spells from the Book of the Dead. Carter knows they are in the presence of something beyond historical, a complete royal burial, untouched by robbers, rich with the artistry of Egypt's golden age. Teams of photographers and illustrators work meticulously to document each object before it is moved. Every item is catalogued, sketched, and described in detail. Carter insists on absolute care, for he understands that what they uncover is more than treasure. It is the story of a civilization. News of the find spreads around the globe, sparking an Egyptian revival in art, fashion, and design. For Egypt itself, the treasures are a reminder of its ancient greatness, a time when the Nile's kingdoms shone brighter than any other. Yet even as the world marvels, Carter is mindful of the responsibility that comes with such discovery. These treasures are not merely gold and jewels, they are the sacred possessions of a king, placed here to guide him into eternity. And now, after millennia in darkness, they have returned to the light. The day comes when Howard Carter and his team prepare to examine the sarcophagus itself. After months of carefully removing treasures and documenting every artifact, the focus now turns to the boy king's remains. The atmosphere in the burial chamber is heavy, part scientific curiosity, part reverence, and part unease. The gilded shrines have been dismantled, revealing a massive quartzite sarcophagus. Its lid, carved with protective deities, is lifted with painstaking care, revealing 3 nested coffins, each more ornate than the last. The innermost coffin is solid gold, its surface engraved with protective spells and the serene face of Tutankhamun. When the golden lid is raised, the world sees, for the first time in over 3,000 years, the pharaoh's funerary mask, made of gold inlaid with lapis, obsidian, and turquoise. It is a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Carter pauses, his voice low, acknowledging that they are in the presence of one of history's greatest treasures. Traits. The team proceeds with the unwrapping, layer by layer, recording every detail. The linen wrappings are fused to the body with hardened resins, requiring careful separation. Inside the wrappings, amulets and jewelry emerge, tiny gold charms, protective scarabs, and intricately carved symbols of life and rebirth. As the examination continues, the pharaoh's fragile bones are revealed. Carter and the attending scientists note the physical signs, A slight build, injuries to the skull and leg, and other clues that will fuel debates about his cause of death for decades to come. Outside the tomb, journalists wait impatiently for any scrap of news, while Egyptian officials observe closely to ensure the work is conducted with respect. Inside, the silence is broken only by the scratch of pens and the soft murmurs of the team. When the day ends, Tutankhamun's remains are rewrapped and placed back in the golden coffin. The mask is left covering his face, as it had for millennia. The mystery of his life and death is far from solved, but the unwrapping has brought the world closer to the boy behind the legend. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb reverberates far beyond the Valley of the Kings. Within months, his golden mask becomes one of the most recognized images in the world, gracing the front pages of newspapers from Cairo to London, New York, and Tokyo. The boy king, who had been nearly erased from history, now captivates millions. In Cairo, the Egyptian Museum becomes the new guardian of many of the tomb's treasures. Tourists and scholars alike flock to see the gilded chariots, jeweled collars, and, above all, the mask, its serene gaze seeming to pierce across millennia. And lines stretch around the museum's entrance as visitors wait for a glimpse of the splendor once reserved only for the gods. Far from Egypt, the Egyptomania phenomenon sweeps the world. Designers incorporate lotus and scarab motifs into jewelry and clothing. Films, books, and plays dramatize the boy king's life and the legendary curse. Exhibitions of the artifacts travel to foreign capitals, drawing record crowds and inspiring awe wherever they appear. For Egypt, Tutankhamun becomes a symbol of national pride, a reminder of the country's unmatched ancient heritage. Politicians and cultural leaders emphasize the importance of protecting such treasures, ensuring they remain part of Egypt's identity. Yet amid the global fascination, scholars continue their work, studying the tomb's contents to piece together the story of the young ruler. Every artifact tells a fragment of his life. The bow he may have used in hunts, the delicate sandals he once wore, the painted chest depicting his triumphs. In a twist of fate, Tutankhamun achieves in death what eluded him in life. A lasting, unshakable presence in the world's memory. No longer a forgotten pharaoh, he is now an icon of ancient majesty, his name spoken with reverence by millions who had never before heard it. Thousands of years after his death, Tutankhamun's story takes a new turn, not in the sands of Egypt, but in the laboratories of modern science. In Ling, Egyptian authorities permit a team of researchers to conduct the first ever DNA analysis and CT scans of the boy king's remains. The goal, to uncover his lineage, his health, and perhaps the mystery of his death. In a climate-controlled lab beneath the Egyptian Museum, technicians carefully move the mummy from its display case into a sterile examination room. The air is cool, the lighting clinical. Ancient linen wrappings are gently shifted aside as swabs collect bone and tissue samples for genetic testing. High-resolution CT scanners circle the body, capturing thousands of images that reveal the skeletal structure beneath. The results begin to paint a complex picture. The DNA shows that Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten and a woman believed to be his father's sister, evidence of the royal family's long practice of sibling marriage. This close lineage, while preserving the divine bloodline, may have led to genetic disorders. The scans reveal multiple health problems, a clubfoot that would have made walking difficult, signs of bone disease, and traces of malaria parasites, the oldest genetic evidence of the disease ever found. combined with a serious leg fracture that became infected, these conditions likely contributed to his early death. For the scientists, these findings are groundbreaking, offering not just medical insight, but a deeper understanding of royal life in ancient Egypt. For Egypt itself, they are a reminder that even the most exalted of kings were mortal, shaped by the same fragility as any human. Yet despite the clinical nature of the work, there is a sense of reverence in the lab. The researchers know they are not just studying bones, they are touching history, bringing the boy king's life into sharper focus. After more than 3 millennia of silence, the scientific revelations about Tutankhamun's health and ancestry ignite a storm of discussion in academic circles. Conferences from Cairo to London buzz with competing theories. Was the boy king a tragic victim of inherited illness, an accident, or something? In a packed lecture hall at the Egyptian Museum, archaeologists, geneticists, and historians debate the findings. Some argue that his clubfoot and bone disease made him physically frail, likely unable to lead in battle. Others contend that the severe leg fracture, combined with malaria, could have killed him, but question whether the injury was the result of an accident or foul play. A smaller, more provocative group of scholars leans toward the idea of assassination. They point to palace intrigue, political tensions, and the ambitions of figures like Aa and Horemheb. Supporters of this theory cite marks on the skull and rib damage, though many experts dismiss these as results of ancient embalming techniques. Meanwhile, historians discuss the brevity of his reign. Was Tutankhamun a true ruler in his own right, or merely a puppet for powerful advisors? Newly analyzed letters between foreign rulers hint at Egypt's weakened influence during his time, but the restoration of the old gods under his name complicates the narrative. For the public, the debates only deepen the fascination. Documentaries, books, and exhibitions frame him alternately as a tragic youth, a political pawn, or the victim of an unsolved royal murder. Through it all, Tutankhamun's golden mask continues to gaze from its museum case, serene, timeless, and silent. Whatever the truth, the boy king still guards his secrets, leaving each generation to wonder which version of history is the closest to reality. After decades of study, exhibition, and scientific examination, the decision is made to return Tutankhamun's remains to the place where they were first laid to rest over 3,000 years ago. The Valley of the Kings, once alive with excavation, now falls quiet as preparations are made for the boy king's homecoming. In the early morning, under a pale desert sky, a small convoy departs from the Egyptian Museum in Luxor. Security escorts flank a specially designed case containing the pharaoh's mummy, cushioned and climate controlled to preserve it during the journey. The route winds along the Nile, its waters shimmering under the sun, as though bearing silent witness to the return of its ancient ruler. At the entrance to his tomb, officials, archaeologists, and priests gather. The air is thick with solemnity. High priests of Amun, in ceremonial robes, chant prayers that have not been heard in this valley for millennia. They carry incense burners, filling the air with the scent of frankincense and myrrh, as if to welcome the pharaoh back into eternity. The case is carried down the same stone steps Carter's team uncovered in Itzen Jubair Arsarar. Inside the burial chamber, the original sarcophagus waits, its quartzite walls still bearing the carved protective deities. Slowly, with precision and reverence, the mummy is placed within, reuniting Tutankhamun with the resting place that had been disturbed for less than a century of human history, but guarded him for millennia. Officials seal the chamber once more, though without the heavy stones and ancient wax of the original burial. Instead, the tomb's entrance is secured with modern preservation systems, ensuring that the pharaoh will remain safe in the years to come. Outside, the desert wind sweeps gently through the valley, carrying with it the last echo of the ancient prayers. The boy king has come home, and Egypt at last gives him peace. The Valley of the Kings lies quiet, its golden cliffs unchanged for thousands of years. Beneath the stone and sand, Tutankhamun rests once more in his tomb. Yet while his body lies in silence, his legacy continues to echo far beyond Egypt's borders. Around the world, exhibitions of his treasures still draw millions of visitors. The golden mask, his eternal likeness, remains one of the most iconic images in human history. Its calm, youthful face, a reminder of the splendor and mystery of ancient Egypt. Scholars continue to study his life, re-examining artifacts, refining theories, and debating his role in the great tapestry of the Jubath dynasty. In Egypt, his name is spoken with pride. Schoolchildren learn of the boy king who restored the old gods, whose tomb remained hidden from robbers for more than 3 millennia, and whose discovery revived global fascination with the ancient world. His story has inspired generations of archaeologists, artists, writers, and dreamers, each captivated by the mixture of beauty, tragedy, and enduring mystery. Oh, for tourists walking the streets of Luxor or standing in the quiet of the Egyptian Museum, seeing Tutankhamun's treasures is more than an encounter with history. It is a connection across time. The same objects he touched, wore, and carried in life now stand before them, preserved as if he had only just set them down. The story of Tutankhamun is no longer just about a boy who ruled and died young. It is about how the past can speak to the present, Wenigwe, how history can survive even when names are almost erased, and how human curiosity can bridge thousands of years. And so, though the sand covers his tomb and the doors remain sealed, the boy king lives on, pipertes. The boy king lives on, not in flesh, but in memory, in gold, in art, and in the unending fascination of those who look upon his face and wonder who he truly was. Dear viewers, we have walked together through the golden sands of history, following the life, death, and legacy of Egypt's most famous young ruler, Tutankhamun, the boy king. From the day of his birth along the banks of the Nile, to the grandeur of his coronation, to the mysteries that still surround his final days, his story has shown us that history is not only made by great wars and long reigns, but also by those whose brief time leaves an everlasting mark. For over 3,000 years, his tomb lay silent, holding its secrets in the Valley of the Kings. Then, through the dedication of explorers and the wonder of discovery, his name was reborn into the hearts of millions. Today, Tutankhamun's face is not only a symbol of ancient Egypt, but also of humanity's endless curiosity, our desire to remember, and our need to preserve the past. As we close this journey, let us carry with us the lesson the boy king leaves behind. That time may pass, empires may fall, but legacy endures in the stories we tell and the history we keep alive. Thank you for watching and for keeping his story alive